The way this energy like first presented itself to me was like the image of ripples on the surface of the water, uh, just sort of like you know rippling outward, I suppose. Um, but like specifically, like what I was drawn to in that like mental image that was pointed out was the fact that there's like this single stone that like you toss in the water, whatever. It can be a tiny little stone, but create ripples of a much greater magnitude, like far beyond the size or scope of like that initial little rock. And if you're skipping a stone, it'll get multiple ripples going. And I think there's something here about like someone seeing their energy as like a small thing, like that small little rock that they're throwing into the water and kind of thinking like there's no way it has that kind of impact. And spirit saying yes way. We got the Fool, Justice, and the Queen of Cups. um Justice, kind of what they're telling me is that there's this like natural like cause and effect to your energy somehow, that almost with the Fool there, it's like you create ripples of opportunity. It's a very interesting thing to say. I'm kind of seeing you show up as like the Queen of Cups, and I think like you may be someone who sees yourself as intuitive, as compassionate, as receptive to emotion. Um, but you don't necessarily see yourself as someone who's like big energy, or energy that has like a huge resounding impact, or energy that is seen in a lot of ways. And that's like kind of the thing about like the rock and the ripples there, is that like once the rock hits the water, once it goes under, like you don't see it anymore, but you still see the ripples. And I think that there's something about your energy there where it may not be you that is like always at the focal point of everyone's attention when they notice those ripples. But it's like you're the source of it, if they were to trace all those ripples back to the center and like look directly there, it's like, you know, Queen of Cups. And I think that there's something here about like you also kind of having that impact on other people and their emotions, and like giving a lot of people, I think, like the feeling that like they could have a new start. They could be one of those ripples that moves outwards. It's like, you create this current, even if you feel like you've disappeared under the water. You create a current wherever you go. So what else about this current? Nine of Pentacles. I think that you both inspire people to stand in their power on their own 2 feet, and I'm also getting like a little bit of, kind of like attracting luxury, attracting abundance kind of vibes, like not just for you, but like almost like a field of abundance. Yeah, Six of Pentacles, not just for you, but like for the people around you too. I love that we have like the scale imagery in the Six of Pentacles too, and this one came out like right under Justice with the scales too. I think that like you're someone who's like very much wants to like give to the people around them, and it's like almost a like part of the reason they're telling me that like you have the kind of gift of like attracting these new starts, these really like abundant opportunities for you and the people around you, because like you are the kind of person who wouldn't hesitate to like share that with someone else, and like that's like reflective even in your unconscious energy. um Four of Swords and Queen of Cups. I think that there's, like I was saying, with this like being something that's even tied in with your unconscious energy. With that like Four of Swords there, it's almost like you don't even have to do anything. It's like something that just kind of is with your energy. And I like in this Four of Swords, it's kind of hard to tell because it's dark. But in this like stained glass window that you see up in the corner, there's like a figure with kind of like a halo or something next to someone who's like kneeling, which is actually like kind of similar imagery to the Six of Pentacles here. Um, and I think that like you may sometimes feel like you spend more time being the rock underwater, and sometimes when you're underwater, you don't see the ripples that you create, and you don't see the people who see those ripples. Um, but it's like again, even when you're just sitting here resting, it's like that's going on in the background. It's still there. It's still like literally a reflection of your energy. Um, so I want to know, like, how can you best appreciate, cultivate, and perpetuate this spiritual gift? King of Cups. Oh, nice. Now we got the King and Queen of Cups. Seven of Wands. The Lovers. So I think that like this, with like the King of Cups being, the kind of like equivalent match face card in the Suit of Cups to the Queen of Cups, and also having the Lovers here, I think that there's a lot about like being in balanced connections because you are someone who tends to like give, not because you expect anything in return, but just sort of like naturally, like unconsciously, like you not even really thinking about it. You have a very generous energy. And so I think that there's like something here about like protecting that, not like, oh, you have to like, cut everyone off and fuck everyone, but like just becoming very aware of your boundaries, both in physical in-person relationships, but also in, just your energy. Um, and like being very sure that, before you really lower those boundaries, that you're looking at someone who's a King of Cups, who's like matching you. And it may be like in a slightly different way. The King of Cups is, the masculine counterpart, so he's a little bit more action oriented, a little bit more focused on kind of the leadership and application portion of, the emotional balance represented by the cup suit, as opposed to more of the receptive, intuitive vibe of the Queen of Cups. But I think that there's something there about like finding someone who has like a similar emotional depth in a complementary way, and that being almost like a source of protection for you and a source of like balance for you. I think to really really allow you to see and experience like your gift. And I think reflect that back to you. Because like I said, you may be feeling like, yeah, sure, I'm the rock, but once I hit the water, it's kind of like I'm underwater, and this is like, well, find someone who really likes shiny rocks, and I'll go and pick the rock up and throw it again. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that metaphor. But this is like very much I think that like you're being sent opportunities to bless a lot of people, both, because that's who you are and that's what you want to do, but also, to give people an opportunity to show you who they really are, because you can learn a lot about a person when you see them struggle, but you can also learn a lot about a person when you see them in abundance, when you see them getting what they want, when you see them not needing anyone else, so to speak. Do they still show up? Do they still show up for you? Do they still show that gratitude? Do they still nurture the connection? Do they take steps to try and protect and cultivate you and, pick you up off the bottom of the lake or whatever? Or are they too busy chasing the ripples? I think that this is very much you have like a very abundant gift, but I do think that like especially emotionally there's like a toll on you, and you may not have even like realized that these things are connected, kind of the emotional fatigue and the ability to kind of like manifest these new opportunities and manifest abundance. Like they are connected. And so I think that like you being someone who is willing to throw themselves to the bottom of the lake to try and create ripples for everyone else, like you need to be surrounded by people who see that and who like value that and who are going to fill your cup when it gets empty, are going to pick you back up, are going to, find a way to balance that out, and like you may provide people with certain types of opportunities or, certain types of abundance, and it may be necessary for you to allow yourself to be provided for in other ways. So that like with that lovers card, like you're getting balance, and it doesn't have to look like someone again who's exactly like you, but rather someone who is complementary to you and someone who understands what you're doing and like really fully appreciates that. I also have this deck. It's not technically an oracle card. It's just like random little messages with mushrooms, and I kind of like it because some of them are just like kind of weird and vague. Um, so I started using it for readings, and he told me that we're gonna use it for this reading, and kind of get you some weird, vague mushroom advice that hopefully like ties into what we're talking about. Okay, we got 2 cards here. In this moment, I have 2 options: step forward into growth or backward into safety. If I own my story, I get to write the ending. Well, I think those are actually some of the more clear messages from this deck. And I think that like there's the way that like I see that kind of like tying in is that you kind of have like these 2 paths forward. One is to kind of continue with this cycle of creating these opportunities that you may not even like fully be able to take advantage of, um, and kind of continuing this cycle of pulling yourself up from the bottom of the lake, being tossed out, creating the ripple, and so on and so forth. Or, you can kind of put like a little bit of trust in the connections that support you, like in the way that you support them or in complementary ways, and like decide that you are deserving of the same kind of abundance, the same kind of love, the same kind of gifts that you give to everyone else. And the fact that like you have the power to call that in, it's like you also have the power to hone that, to own that, um, to get credit where credit is due. Um, and I think that like that may be scary, especially where you're someone who really like cares about helping other people. Like you're not going to be the type of person to like come in and say, okay, I'm demanding, credit for this or that, and it doesn't have to be that way. But I think that there is something to be said for like the fact that there's nothing wrong with wanting to be appreciated, and it may like feel kind of scary or feel kind of unsafe, but I think it's like a new dimension of growth. And I think that like moving into that is going to allow you to feel like you have more control over what you're doing, more control over your own narrative, more control over, the situations that you're in, rather than feeling like someone else is just putting you through that. It's almost like they're giving me the image of like, you're not just the stone. You're also, a person who can throw it, and you can conceptualize that as, your higher self, your energy, in whatever way you want to take it, how it resonates. But I think that like there is like this sense of viewing yourself as an active like writer of your own story, of your own energy, of your own path, as opposed to just like a tool to bless other people, which is a great thing. But at a certain point, if you're blessing everyone around you and you end up the only one in the room who's not getting any blessings, it might be time to reconsider the room that you're in. Just a thought. You have that power. You have the power to write your own ending, and to accept growth, and to accept love and validation and reciprocation for everything that you already do. Like it's already more than enough. But I think that it's only going to get better as you take that step out of what feels safe, what feels like everything you've experienced before, and kind of step into a place of growth, a place of creation, and a place of empowerment. So, best of luck with that, and hopefully that helps you.